Okay, so this is a 4-piece system. So it comes with the 2 sides, the back and the bottom. Main reason they make it this way is so that you can actually get it in a remodel job like this, because otherwise you would never be able to take this whole unit and get it through the doorways. So this is a Clarion tub. I don't really do fiberglass showers all that much, but I've been really impressed with the Clarion models because of the thick fiberglass construction. I always find that the thinner it is, the weaker it is, and the less likely it's going to last a long time. But this stuff is made pretty well, and I've been really pleased with the durability of it. So, but you just want to take this apart before you bring it in your home. So you got to take these little packing strips off of here, and then they just have little wing nuts. So these little wing nuts come off. Good Lord. I'm gonna take some of this part of the front off of here. Okay, so this drywall corner is gonna be problematic with sliding this unit in. Plus, I need to fur out all the 2x4s in order to overcome the flange on the edge of the fiberglass unit. So I'm just going to get rid of this side of the corner, put a new piece of quarter bead on. But it'll be easier if I can get rid of that corner. So I'm just going to take my Sawzall and cut it out. Okay, so we just dry fitted our fiberglass unit here. So we're just gonna be using a standard no caulk fiberglass shower base drain made by Odie. So the way this works is just basically using a rubber gasket that goes around the pipe, and this locking nut will lock around the 2-inch pipe. So you want to be able to determine your riser pipe to go about midway in the fitting, so about 1 inch below the top surface of the Odie drain. So just 1 inch below the surface of this, so that this caulkless fitting will sit nicely on it. And then the locking ring, you don't want the locking ring to be above. You want it to be like either flush or even just a little bit above actually. But if you have it down below, then you can't tighten this all the way, because this little piece goes in here to tighten it. So if it goes down below, you can't tighten it. So you want to make sure that this locking nut doesn't go below, you don't have the riser pipe going up above it. So this is just one way to go about it, and that is to measure and then cut that riser pipe exactly where you need it. Another way that is probably a little bit more foolproof is to actually just allow the riser pipe to extend up out of the drain and then cut it down with an inside pipe cutter. So I'll demonstrate that here, showing you how to go about doing it in that fashion. This might actually be a better way for you to go ahead and do that. Let's measure down and see where we're at. So we got a 2-inch hub. So the actual drain itself is 2 inches, and we're flush with it right now. So we only have to cut about 1 inch off of that. So what I would do is just measure on my inside pipe cutter and put a little mark about 1 inch. Make sure the bevel is facing up. The rubber gasket is flush with the top of the pipe. Now you can take your locking ring. Okay, so we'll just move this out and get some mortar. All right. Anytime that there's something wider than 16 inches, you want to put an extra stud in. And the other thing, when you're installing a fiberglass unit, it's really important that this back wall is plumb. If this is not plumb, none of your wall panels are going to go in correctly when it meets the base. So that's really, you can get away with the side walls being unplumbed, even if it's a 1/4 inch. It's not the end of the world. But when it comes to the back wall, if that's off, it's not going to sit correctly. So just really pay attention to your back wall. And then, we're not doing tile, but it's still a good idea to just make sure that your studs stay in line with one another. Pretty good. Okay. All right, so then let's go down and mix a little bit of that mortar. I want to show that mortar. Okay, so we're going to be using some mortar mix for underneath this fiberglass pan. I would just make sure that it's a mortar mix and not a cement mix. You don't want all that aggregate in there. You want to be able to move this around and get it to now. Now we're going to be doing a little bit of leveling. So we're going to make this a little bit thicker, probably as thick as what you would lay brick or block with. But if you were just to set it without having to level anything out, you can make this pretty fluid because it's just made to set that tub. But this is going to give a little bit of reinforcement and get me perfectly level. Yeah, so that's about what I would set a brick with. So that's fairly thick. To connect this pan, my OD drain, I want to use 100% silicone. It has to be 100% silicone. So we're going to put a big bead on the actual pan, and we're also going to put a bead right on the actual drain assembly. So you can see how that's all oozing out of there. Don't worry about the excess, but that's what you want to see. You want to make sure that this is completely sealed. Okay, so then you put your rubber gasket on, and then your little spacer. And that's all it really gets, is just hand tightened. Okay, so for the mortar, we just want to put some blobs. So I know we had a little bit of unlevelness in this back corner. Now this is mainly, now you could technically just set this in place without anything, but this is going to give you a little bit more stability, and it's going to make it feel really rock solid underneath it here. So the whole thing doesn't have to be completely encased with cement. It's just made to basically help support underneath of it. Best way to go about this is try to set it down into the mortar. Okay, so that's pretty level that way. This could be, just step on the back corner here a little bit just to get it set level. Okay, that's good. All right, then we'll pre-drill. Again, make sure you're nice and level. And then you want to pre-drill your holes. And then if you do have a gap, we do have a slight gap here, you want to just shim this. Make sure that that stays tight. You don't want to pull this into the stud. And yeah, anywhere there's a gap, just shim it out. That's not too bad. Okay, so the way this works is you want to have the tapered edge facing up, because the way this goes in, it'll basically tighten and push this gasket out and make a watertight connection. If you do it the other way, it's not going to be as good of a seal. So always make sure that the taper edge is up. And just put it around the drain. And you can use a screwdriver to Alright, so you basically really don't want this rubber gasket being way above the pipe. You kind of want it to be even with it in order for it to seal process. Okay, and then we can just take this. Okay, there we go. Yeah, it's nice and tight on there. All right, we're good. Let's clean that up. Okay, so grab bars. Very important if you're doing a walk-in shower for anybody elderly. And even if you're not going to install them, I would really highly recommend getting some blocking up so that if you do decide to add them, that you can have something strong to go into. Now, this is obviously a fiberglass unit, so they're really not going to work at all retrofitting afterwards. So you need to have framing behind a fiberglass unit in order for these grab bars to work at all. Really simple with this particular tub. All I got to do, so I always like to keep my grab bars around 36 inches off the floor. So there's our laser. So I'll be able to go anywhere in here. What I'm going to use is just like a 2x10, so I have plenty of room. So even if they want it a little bit higher, I have the opportunity to mount that. So really simple. This just goes on the outside of the studs in this particular model because there's an 1.5 inch gap between the fiberglass and the wall. So we'll just put this up. It's kind of centered somewhere within the laser area. And just screw this in place. Okay, so just like that. Yeah, okay, so that might be a niche shim there. So one of the things when you install this is first you want to make sure that, you know, this back wall was plumb, and then also make sure your side walls are plumb. Now, on these side flanges, you need to pre-drill and screw in every 6 inches along the seam. So on this side, we're good because we have a stud right here. But on this side, we're going to have to add some additional framing in order to bump that out properly. So we'll end up getting a stud down in the bottom here, and then we're going to have to use some 3/4 inch plywood on this side because our recessed niche or our recessed medicine cabinet is going to interfere with basically having something to adhere to. So we'll add some additional framing here. I'll take this back out. All right, so you want to make sure this is all nice and clean, and then you want to use 100% silicone. This is just a white silicone. So you want to put this all along the back here. One of the nice things about this setup is they have these pins here, so this just lines the whole unit up. So what you want to do is just kind of hold this up above and then slide it down, and then you just have to line it up with those pins. Go. Okay, so then you want to just make sure that your wall is plumb. So if it's not, for any reason, shim this out to bring it to plumbness. But hopefully you paid attention to whether your back wall was plumb before you did this. So in this instance, we're completely plumb, just having no shims on the back here. So okay, so then pre-drill your holes. And then this stud is slightly out a little bit, so just put a shim there. And every 6 inches on the vertical seams here. All right, and if there's a little bit of space here too, shim that out. The same here. We'll put a caulk joint along the base here. And we'll also go along here. Okay. Simple as that. Let's make Make sure that seam stays tight and it looks good. And any silicone, make sure, again, we'll be addressing those seams later on after everything's about finished. We're just gonna basically right at this joint. A block here. But we want to reference where this is, this area here. That's basically where I'll be putting the grab bar. So 14 inches off of this. So it just slides right in. If this is wet, because we just ran the shower faucet, I'm gonna let this whole thing dry before I even try to caulk this, because if there's any water in any of these grooves, you're just not gonna get a good caulk joint. It's just gonna end up falling apart on you when you get water mixed in with the silicone. So let's make sure this dries. We'll do this the last thing of the day. But we had all that water hitting this shower system, and water and silicone do not work very well together.